Now, I will say that Los Angeles has changed everything because a lot of money is going to be necessary for Los Angeles. And a lot of people on the other side want that to happen. And
North Carolina, too.
Fast. Well, they don't care about North Carolina. The Democrats don't care about North Carolina. What they've done with FEMA is so bad. FEMA is a whole nother discussion because all it does is complicate everything. FEMA has not done their job for the last 4 years. You know, I had FEMA working really well. We had hurricanes in Florida. We had Alabama, tornadoes. But unless you have certain types of leadership, it gets in the way. And FEMA is going to be a whole big discussion very shortly because I'd rather see the states take care of their own problems.
This is Trump casting doubt on the future of FEMA now that Los Angeles needs federal assistance in the aftermath of the ongoing fires taking place in the city that I live in. First of all, any media outlet crowing about Trump's new unity theme should probably consider taking their heads out of the sand. And I'm looking at you, Brett Baer.
I do think how he talks about it tomorrow may have changed. With the second time, he's changed a little bit. He seems more comfortable in his skin. He seems very easy to talk about uniting the country more than perhaps he did before. And I would expect that message to come through tomorrow a little bit more than we heard before.
Ah, yes. We're back to Trump's pivot to unity. Back to the new tone by Donald Trump. Here's a hint. Donald Trump is the same pathetic, vindictive, small man that he has always been. The fact that he's now doubting the continued existence of FEMA solely because Los Angeles needs help is all the proof you need that he is not here to unite anyone. He is a transactional person with zero willingness to help anyone in this country who he can't or won't benefit from personally. This isn't about us, it is about him, as it always is. Now, so as not to bury the lead here, let me just say that if Donald Trump decides to leave disaster relief up to the states, that would be a devastating burden primarily on red states. I understand the attention is on California right now, but the states that are disproportionately impacted by natural disasters are Republican strongholds. The states most impacted by hurricanes, for example, here are the numbers covering the past few decades. Florida was hit with 120 hurricanes, including 2 that were Category 5, where a combined 140 people were left dead. Next was Texas, that was hit with 64 hurricanes, including 19 that were Category 3 or 4. Louisiana was hit by 63 hurricanes, with 19 registering Category 3 to 5. North Carolina saw 58 hurricanes, with 7 of them being Category 3 or 4, and South Carolina had 32 hurricanes, with 5 of them being Category 3 or 4. Not exactly liberal bastions there, are they? And you know which of those states are bigger donor states than California? None. California, along with Democratic states like Delaware, Massachusetts, Illinois, New Jersey, Washington, Minnesota, Rhode Island, and New York are some of the biggest donor states in the U.S. Meanwhile, the taker states, well, that would include West Virginia, Mississippi, Alaska, Kentucky, Alabama, South Carolina, Montana, and Oklahoma in the bottom 12. So if the question is whether we want to prevent the federal government from offering funding to states that need it, it's not the blue states that are going to be most impacted, it is the red states that are going to suffer. So if Donald Trump's priority is to win the 24-hour news cycle and fail to even look 5 inches in front of his face, all to punish California, then he can go for it. But in the long run, it's not California that's going to be hurt most. But hey, own the libs, am I right? And what's worse, his rationale is insane. He says that Democrats didn't take care of North Carolina when they controlled the federal government and FEMA. I should remind you that in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene hitting western North Carolina, the $9 billion allocated to that state got over the finish line thanks to the Democrats. Meanwhile, 34 Republicans voted against the bill. In other words, the fact that North Carolinians got any assistance was no thanks to the Republican Party. When Hurricane Helene hit the state, the Biden administration deployed more than 1,500 federal personnel to remain to support the response and recovery operations. They opened 14 disaster recovery centers to serve more than 5,700 visitors. FEMA provided temporary hotel stays to more than 2,500 households through transitional sheltering assistance. FEMA inspectors performed more than 21,000 home inspections to help survivors assess damage and apply for financial assistance. They restored power to 99% of impacted North Carolina customers due to thousands of utility personnel working around the clock. In total, the administration approved more than $300 million in assistance across the state, including $118 million in individual assistance to more than 87,000 households and more than $189 million for debris removal and other emergency efforts. In fact, here are a bunch of Republican governors praising Joe Biden's response to the hurricane relief effort from neighboring states that were also impacted.
As of today, what has been the ongoing kind of federal assistance for South Carolina?
It's been superb. I finally was able to speak to the president yesterday afternoon after he missed me and I missed him leaving. He left a voicemail, I left a voicemail. So we finally connected yesterday afternoon. He said that whatever we need to let him know, and we're doing that. Also, Secretary Buttigieg called yesterday and said the same thing, and also Deanie Criswell for FEMA has also called. So, and a number of the governors have called. So we're getting assistance, and we're asking for everything we need.
I'm incredibly appreciative of the rapid response and the cooperation from the federal team at FEMA.
Response was quick from the federal government that allowed for that reimbursement. Those reimbursements are already available to be made, a fast turnaround, frankly. And you see this rush of local officials, TEMA, FEMA, from the federal to the state to the local emergency management agencies. There is a great deal of hope when you see what is behind the effort, the coordinated effort in this community to begin to rebuild.
And beyond that, you know what's worse? Republicans in the state legislature in North Carolina actually tied the financial disaster relief package for their own state to provisions stripping power away from Democrats in that state. In other words, they held their own North Carolina constituents' disaster relief hostage, all to seek to entrench their own power in government. And yet, these people have the audacity to claim that Democrats can learn from them about good government. These people were content to let their own constituents die on the vine while they were enacting a power grab, and yet they think Democrats are the problem here. And of course, if Trump was capable of shame, he would admit that the only people politicizing disaster relief are the Republican Party themselves, with him, by the way, leading the charge. Here he is, giddy at the prospect of conditioning disaster relief to California.
If you add Los Angeles into it, then you can really do one big, beautiful bill, because frankly, they want that so badly. They want the money to go out there so badly. And I don't think we should do a bill until Los Angeles is included. And when Los Angeles is included, we get everything we want.
And here's Gavin Newsom's response to the prospect of Trump and Republicans conditioning that aid during our most recent interview.
Can I have your reaction to Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, coming out in support of establishing the precedent of conditioning disaster relief, and him doing it from the state of Louisiana? Like, it's not like this guy is any stranger to what would happen if we start playing politics with disaster relief. So can I have your reaction to that?
I hope it looks in his heart, the pain and suffering of the American people, the trauma that everybody's experiencing in his country. He's the Speaker of the House of Representatives for the United States of America, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all, not some who may have a political point of view. By the way, I didn't ask anyone what their political affiliation was when we're down here working to try to protect people in the community from the ravages of these fires and these unprecedented winds. But you know what? Nor did we ever, never in California questioned whether or not we as taxpayers in the largest state in the union should support the people of Louisiana at a time of emergency and need. We never conditioned it. We never talked about putting the full fate and credit of the United States of America with the debt ceiling bill so we can get tax cuts for billionaires and corporations that don't need it, and then put at risk the lives of hundreds of thousands of Americans that happen to live in California.
And this, by the way, is California as a donor state, as arguably the biggest donor state in the country.
Yeah, size of 21 state populations combined. A state with millions and millions of Trump supporters, Speaker Johnson and Mr. President-elect. Millions of your supporters are out here. They need your help. They need your empathy. They need your care, whatever compassion you can express, as opposed to condemnation and divisive language that has aided and embedded nothing except mis and disinformation that's flamed fear and flamed a lot of anxiety for folks that are simply trying to recover and at the same time our first responders trying to address the emergency at hand, which still hasn't been fully buttoned up.
The reality is that Donald Trump and Republicans have no shame. They engage in naked projection, knowing full well that right-wing media will never call them out. These people exist to exact revenge on their perceived enemies, no matter how much goodwill, or in the case of federal funding, how much money those very enemies give them. The problem comes when their desperation to hurt Democrats ultimately backfires on them, and that's exactly what we're seeing now. I don't know how much pain Republican voters have to endure before they finally recognize that when you elect somebody like Donald Trump, what you are saddled with, first and foremost, is his ego.
Before you go, just a quick note, if you'd like to see more of my content, which is always free of advertising, sponsorships, and paywalls, please make sure to subscribe to this channel using the subscribe button right here on the screen. And if you'd like to support my work even further, you can grab a copy of my instant #1 New York Times selling book, Shameless, available for sale right now. That link is also on the screen. Thanks so much for watching.